Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new episode of our F1 24 career mode here on the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today we are racing in my personal favorite Grand Prix in the entire world, the Singapore Grand Prix. And we had some developments coming in this weekend as well. R&D looking good for the team. We brought in some upgrades and we got some more on the way. But we had our final meetings with both Williams as well as McLaren setting up a brief meeting this weekend for final offers and what it can look like for next year. And this is what was on the table. So after talking with our team principal, James Vowles and whatnot, Williams were willing to offer a 2-year deal as well, basically even car development incentive or input alongside Alex Albon, and it's going to be $3 million per year. That's Canadian dollars we're talking for me. McLaren offers 2 years as well, but they are willing to only offer 2 million Canadian dollars and less input than Lando Norris at the McLaren team. So those are the final offers on the table, and as well, I didn't quite get what I wanted out of those teams, and that was opportunities to be able to go racing elsewhere and try and do different things and show what Formula 1 drivers are capable of doing. So, and we know Trackhouse is willing to offer something like that, and we're going to be getting a final offer from Trackhouse next episode. Basically, we'll be meeting with Justin Marks at a home race for what will be Trackhouse Racing next season in Formula 1 in Texas. So it'll be interesting to see what their final offer is. We'll be kind of having a fledged out kind of talk with them and see what is going to be on the table. We have 3 teams to choose from: staying with Williams, going to McLaren, or going to Trackhouse Racing. And the worst option would probably be Trackhouse in terms of where they'll stack up on the grid, but it could be long-term a great decision. But like I said, Sebastian Vettel will be involved in that next episode as well, so stay tuned on that. But focusing in on the actual action on track this weekend here from Singapore, we have a special livery on the car, another one-off. It's the Winfield livery. If you want it on PC, you can get in the link in the description down below. But it is supposed to be a very rainy weekend here, and I found myself struggling significantly on the wet compound tire. I was extremely slow on the wet compound. Now, the rain had let up enough later in practice. You can see only 9 minutes left in the session at this point, but we were able to get the intermediate compound tire onto the car, and the pace for myself compared to the other drivers around me had increased quite dramatically, so I was quite happy about that. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a downpour to start the Grand Prix, so that's going to be a bit problematic, as we're finding very quickly that I just don't have good pace in the wet compound tire, but the intermediates is okay. It's also supposed to rain at the very start of qualifying, but the rain is supposed to move out pretty quick, so I think we'll be putting laps on the dry compound tire in that first qualifying session. But you can see we end up P8, P11 for Albon, my teammate there, and myself, and that takes us now Saturday night qualifying, and you can see the rain coming down quite heavily, but it's the intermediate compound tire that is going to be the ideal tire for this condition. But the thing is, the rain moved out really quick, so basically we're not even going to put a lap on the intermediate compound tire. We're just going to simply wait until it's dry enough, and it would get dry enough right at the tail end of the session. I mean the very end, less than a minute left on the clock, and we're just now going out on the racetrack in this very bright red Winfield livery. Looks absolutely flawless. Love this design, as we are now seeing everybody moving on to the dry soft compound tire, including my teammate Alex Albon, myself, George Russell right there, actually going down the order a little bit, but the track was kind of in the still getting quicker drying phase, so you want to make a lap as late as possible. And George Russell there goes fastest, top of the board after being P19. Albon's not going to make it into Q2. We will, because we're one of the latest ones to go as the track was continuing to dry. We go P5 in Q1, and you can see Hulkenberg, Albon, Zhou, Magnussen, and Pierre Gasly all the way at the bottom there in P20. That brings us now into Q2, and look at the difference now. The sky already clearing up as the rain has moved out, so we can just focus, of course, on not having any weather worries, and we're all by ourselves on the racetrack just trying to find, you know, whatever we can here now. And we do have enough time on the board to run a few laps if we need to, and we have enough fuel to do that as well. So that was certainly an option if we need it here, because it felt like it was going to take me a few laps to kind of get up to speed, kind of get where I need to be, and that would be proven, as you're going to see a little bit later here in the lap. Rounding the final couple of corners, one left-hander left, you can nearly keep that thing pinned, but we cross the stripe and we only go P13. Running another lap, the second lap, we would only find about a 1/10 of a second improvement, but I decided, okay, we're going to go for a third lap. We can find actually about a 1/10 and a half. That keeps us P13. So trying again, we would immediately find time at the start of the lap, and overall really finding time as it was going on. Half a second improvement at the end of Sector 1. 6/10 of a second, 7/10 of a second. Hamilton, Russell both currently out here in Q2. Mercedes, who started off the season with potential, with some speed, they have been struggling as of late over the last few episodes, and we're seeing it again here. We've, of course, seen it in the R&D. Williams is pretty well matched with Mercedes right now in the R&D now, but final couple of corners, they're both still below the cut line. We cross the stripe, and it's still not enough. P13, Hamilton gets through, but George Russell does not find improvement. P11 for Esteban Ocon, Russell, myself, Bottas, and Ricciardo, all out as we head to the Grand Prix.
Marina Bay hosted a Grand Prix that briefly ran in the 60s and 70s, but the Garden City re-entered the calendar for good in 2008. We missed it for a couple of years, but it was great to come back to the Singapore Grand Prix. Things have changed slightly around the Marina Bay circuit, with 4 corners removed between turns 16 and 19. It means the lap length is now just over 3 miles, and that might come as a welcome relief to the drivers, and more especially their brakes. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Fernando Alonso, Sainz, Perez, Norris, Stroll, Oscar Piastri, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Ocon, Bottas, Hülkenberg, Albon, Joe, Gasly, Russell, Ricciardo, Magnussen, and Golden Boy. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track.
How's it feeling in there, mate?
Wet? That's really the only way to put it. We're on the wet compound tire for this one. It is a very wet start to this Grand Prix. We are taking grid penalties, if you notice. I forgot to mention that at the start, due to a few part changes going over the limit there at the start of the episode. It is supposed to stop raining. It's going to be an interesting one as Verstappen leads the way.
Right then, the formation lap has started, and I must say the weather conditions aren't the best today for visibility and for grip. As each driver performs this lap, they'll be wanting to settle in and concentrate, as this race, in these conditions, will require a lot of focus.
As expected, everybody's starting on that wet compound tire here. It is going to be an interesting one. Just drivers going to be chasing these cars around off the grid into turn 1.
As the cars make their way back to the starting grid to form up and get ready for lights out, let's hope the race ahead today is a thrilling one that will go down as a memorable Grand Prix in the history books.
Good luck there, Gary. Just be patient. Let the race come to you again.
Stay safe, George. Long race, we will have chances to go forward.
Really damn wet out here. This should be fun.
You see everybody coming around to make their way to the grid here from Singapore for our first Singapore Grand Prix, site of Sebastian Vettel's last win in Formula One. Of course, our mentor now honestly looking beautiful here graphic-wise as we roll up to the grid. Max Verstappen, 64 wins to his name after last episode, looking to make it 65 here tonight in Singapore. It's going to be lights out. We're racing in the Singapore Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen covers off Leclerc into turn 1. No, he doesn't. Leclerc's up the inside into the first turn. Can he make it happen? They continue wheel to wheel, nearly contact. Verstappen just about off the road. They somehow keep it in one piece without contact. Verstappen through, stays ahead over Charles Leclerc, who wants to continue to put pressure on in the championship after a couple of rough races that went in favor of Verstappen. Alonso P3, the pair of McLarens. Norris, Piastri a little bit further down the order in that top 10. 10. We see some side-by-side here between Valtteri Bottas as well as Esteban Ocon here as we continue down this long DRS straight without DRS, of course, early on in this Grand Prix. And how about Esteban Ocon pinning it round the outside? Can he get the job done? Yes, he does. Valtteri Bottas and Sauber going to have to settle in. And I'm in the background battling with Kevin Magnussen while our teammate of Alex Albon's going at it with the Frenchman of Pierre Gasly here, trying to go around the outside and get the position gained, and I'm still scrapping it out side by side in the background, but Albon gets the job done, and Magnussen lets me have the 19th position here. Now, you remember in practice, we struggled significantly on the wet compound tire, so I was expecting more of, well, exactly that right here. Now, we'll of course wait and see how things go, but we're settling in behind Zhou Guanyu. George Russell has gone nowhere. He's still P16 as Verstappen leads the way, and once again, using the AI fix mod with the AI here in Singapore turned out to be a great idea. It really felt a lot more natural, and you'll see that as the race goes on. But I was immediately feeling the same struggles I had in practice on the wet compound tire, just really lacking grip. That's just kind of the main issue, is there's no grip in the rear tires specifically, so I'm just kind of sliding everywhere, and you can see we lose a good chunk of time right there, which is of course not what we want to be doing here early on in this Grand Prix. Now, we do know it's going to eventually transition into the intermediate compound tire, and that's when we're going to be a lot quicker on pace, but for now it's quite simple. The only thing that we can do is, well, quite simply hang on until that opportunity comes to put on those intermediate compound tires. So as these laps are going on, it's just about limiting the damage, minimizing the damage, I should say. Overall, the gap in the first couple of laps, it's about 1.4 seconds, and that gap continues to increase. Lap 3, you can now see 1.7, 1.8 to Joe Ricardo. They're settling in P17. We're not really going to see a lot of overtaking in these opening laps until it starts to dry up. But Singapore in general is a bit of a difficult track to overtake on, no matter what the situation is. But you can see on the track map, AI now starting to spread out quite a bit here, at least in the top half of the grid. But I was settling in lap 4. You can see we're chasing this car around, and you know, I was expecting to be under a lot more pressure from Kevin Magnussen, considering how much I was struggling, but he wasn't really putting much pressure on me. He was hovering around the same 4 to 5 to 6 tenths of a second gap behind, but the gap to Zhou has now increased to about 2 seconds. But as these laps go on, if I'm not making mistakes at least, the gap isn't really increasing too much compared to what it did in the first lap or two. So we were already, I felt like, hitting that point of where I needed to, you know, get to a bit of a crossover, transitioning more towards the intermediates. You can see a bit of a dry line forming here, which is as well helping us. But now look at this, lap 7. The gap is coming down, which tells me that it must be about to be time to get ready to switch over to an intermediate compound tire. We had now cut the gap down from the 2 seconds to 1.6 seconds. So we are reeling in Zhou Guanyu and setting ourselves up nicely for the laps to come. And here we go. Perez is going to come in, as well as Oscar Piastri. There's our sign right there. They're getting the wets off. They're putting the intermediate compound tire on. So we're going to be next to join them. Now, as we come into the pits, it's important to note in this game, and I like it in this game, where it's a lot more gradual of a transition. So you can now get away with running 5, 6 extra laps on a wet compound tire, where before you really couldn't. You had to make that call and that switch within a lap, or absolute maximum 2. So we are going to see differing strategies here, I reckon. We come in, we get the intermediate compound tire on, but I just think this is going to be the quickest option, is just to put that intermediate on as soon as possible. Get ourselves out of traffic as well, because obviously with that grid penalty, we found ourselves in P19 going nowhere on the start. I think this is going to be a good opportunity to gain some track position long term, as Max Verstappen continues to lead the way. When will they wait for him to pit? I would imagine they're using Perez pitting first as an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit about maybe when the right point is to switch over to that intermediate compound tire. Well, Verstappen's coming in at the end of this lap. Starting lap 9, ending lap 8. Verstappen sacrifices the lead. He'll get those wets off. He comes in. We saw McLaren pit last time, but no McLarens this time, and actually a slow stop on one of the rear wheels there for Max Verstappen. So that's going to cost him a little bit of time, but he would exit out in front of his teammate of Sergio Perez. So not a big concern for Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc now out in front of this Grand Prix. They're trying a little something different, trying to find something. They don't seem confident in straight up beating Verstappen. Leclerc goes and puts the fastest lap on the board here for this lap 9 coming to lap 10, as we as well are just continuing to find improvements now. So I'm feeling quite confident in the pace in this car. I'm hoping that it's going to work out. We are very slowly seeing cars trickle into the pits. Right now, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll as well, they're all in, but they're going to come out in front of us here. As you can see, Valtteri right there. So overall, I think we have made a time gain. It's just now, how are we going to gain track position? Now, these other guys that are staying out longer, I think are the drivers that we need to focus in on actually passing. So Bottas wasn't necessarily a realistic overtaking opportunity, or option I should say. As you can see, a bit of a slip and slide there in the bridge section on lap 10 of 31, the longest Grand Prix of the season, the most grueling physical Grand Prix of the season here. And then you of course throw rain into the equation. It is a difficult race to say the least. We still have many drivers on the track on the wet compound tire. This is what I really like about the new wet weather system in this game, is that, like I said, it's a lot more gradual. You can get away with doing this. Leclerc is out in front still by 2.3 seconds over Fernando Alonso, and of course Carlos Sainz departing Ferrari at the end of the season. They're running P3, 1 win on the season for the Spaniard. Interestingly enough, he's been linked with Trackhouse Racing potentially for next season, so that's going to be fascinating to kind of see what happens. And as well, by the way, I forgot to do a through the grid segment for this episode. I apologize about that, but I will make sure it's back next episode from Circuit of the Americas now, as we continue running P20. But we're about to see a lot of cars, I think, flood into the pit lane here over the next couple of laps, as we're really kind of hitting that point where you want to be on the intermediate compound tire, and sure enough, here we go. So Gasly's in, Russell's in. It's not been a pretty day for Russell. He is all the way at the bottom here of the grid, but nonetheless, we gain a few positions there, and we continue on, and we're going to continue to gain positions for sure, as we continue to just settle in behind Valtteri Bottas. We don't quite have enough to put the pressure on the back of the Sauber, but we just got enough to hang with them. So Leclerc is going to pit now on lap 14. Intermediates going on there. Alonso, everybody now is flooding in. They are actually going to do the double stack here with the Ferraris. Norris, Tsunoda, they're going to come in. Hamilton, Albon as well, but I think these guys are really going to lose some crucial time, especially like an Albon or a Tsunoda. There goes Verstappen to the lead, and Perez as well going to go through. It's a Red Bull 1-2. Charles Leclerc down to P3. Alonso having a great night here at P4. As you can see, I'm actually overheating my rear tires right now, but look at the positions we're going to gain by pitting that many laps earlier. We're going to get past Hamilton. Tsunoda into 12th position here in Singapore, due to the fact that we just pitted a good substantial amount of time earlier, 5 laps, and that has really made enough of a difference. But now I'm struggling with my rear tire temperatures. And now as well, there it is, yellow flag actually on the racetrack, and it's Gasly. Pierre Gasly spun around in front of our teammate of Alex Albon. George Russell, he's going to back up on the nose of the British driver, and this is going to bring out a safety car. We got 2 cars stopped on the racetrack now. Safety car deployed, and that is going to spice things up, as that's a perfect opportunity for me to cool down my rear tires. But we'll get another look at what just happened. It's Pierre Gasly all on his lonesome, going around, spinning himself out right in front of traffic there, and things are about to get interesting because the rain is starting to really let up here now. And look at this, we come around one more time, the rain is officially over, it has stopped. The track, you can still see, is damp, so it's going to be interesting here, because now the question is, of course, how quick is this track going to dry up? We've been in a position before, if you guys remember earlier this season in Austria, we made the call far too early to pit onto the dry tire because we just thought it looked like a point of being able to get on the dries, and we were very wrong. So we don't want to make that situational decision again tonight and make that error that we did in Austria. So I'm going to be a lot more patient this time and kind of wait for Mark to tell me it's time, as we're back racing in a big slide on the exit of that final turn. We run P12 as we enter turn number 1, but we have Yuki Tsunoda as well as Lewis Hamilton hot on our tail here now, but it's Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, the top 3 as we round these first and opening corners of this beautiful Singapore scenery now, as we continue on trying to stick with Valtteri Bottas, but I felt like we were kind of in a position again where at least we have pace to hang with these guys, but we just don't have enough to actually pass them. So we're just waiting at this point for the opportunity to switch over basically onto that dry compound tire, and once that opportunity arises, it's game on. But for now, it's just about being patient. We've kind of gotten to P12 by being patient, so I think we can get a points finish if we play our cards right. It's all strategy based here, racing for us tonight, and we have utilized this strategy to gain us 8 positions as we round the final turns now. Lap 19 of 31, Verstappen stretching out the gap to Perez, and cars behind my rear tires are starting to overheat, but Mark was just telling me now it might be time to switch over to a dry compound tire.
Okay, box, pit here.
You hear Mark calling us in to the pit, so we're going to get rid of the intermediates, but everybody is pitting, including Max Verstappen, who's in. Norris is just in front, but hold on, pit lane is absolutely crowded. Everybody is into the pits, except you see some drivers staying out. Actually, Norris did stay out, sorry, but look at this absolute mess. We're completely in the middle of it now. We're going to box our team at Albon. They're going to double stack. I don't like that move now, and you can see how much of a disaster this is. This is going to ruin Alex Albon's race, but we as well lose some track position from the looks of it, I think, but overall we might gain because we've lost out to Tsunoda, we've lost out to Lewis Hamilton as well, but the drivers that are staying out right now on the inters, I think, are going to lose out to us. So I think overall we are going to make gains, and here we come around one more time, and sure enough, those guys off the inters onto the dries, sure enough, drop down the order. That puts us into P10. So overall we do make a small gain. Lando Norris exits just in front of Yuki Tsunoda. A huge gain for Lewis Hamilton outside the top 10 into P7. What a drive there. Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc 1-2. Perez got the short end of the stick there in the pit lane with the double stack. He finds himself way down the order in P3, just in front of Carlos Sainz. Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas, well up inside the top 10 here on lap 22 with 10 laps to go. Can he hang on in that Haas now as we just continue to follow? We haven't made a single on-track pass since the very first lap of the Grand Prix, and we have managed to find 10 positions overall, just all because of strategy. Strategy has been everything here tonight in Singapore, but Yuki Tsunoda has an issue.
Okay, Tsunoda is losing power. Do not waste time on him.
Yuki Tsunoda is losing power, but just before we're getting ready to make a move on him, hold on, Hamilton going for a move on Hülkenberg. Lunges one around the outside, he'll get the job done, and in the meantime, I was able to make the pass on Yuki Tsunoda. We'll get another look at how that one happened actually now, but it was pretty easy. I mean, he's quite defenseless here into the corner. I cleared him before we even hit the apex. Oscar Piastri just behind Tsunoda there as well, ready to pounce, but Tsunoda is really going to back up some traffic because of the lack of power and the difficulty in passing in Singapore. He is going to cause, well, the train effect actually is what he's going to cause that we really haven't seen at all tonight in Singapore now, but we're settled into P9. Lando Norris just behind Hülkenberg. Hamilton driving away from those two now as Hamilton now runs in that 6th position. Honestly, considering where Hamilton started, where George Russell started, this is turning into a pretty decent effort, at least for Lewis Hamilton coming into the closing laps of this Grand Prix. And you can see, look at the gap behind. Now 5 seconds to Tsunoda, and Piastri has yet to been able to get around the Japanese driver, even with his lack of power in that Visa Cash App Racing Bull machine, as we now come to lap 26, and you were seeing that Lando Norris, he's having a hard time passing the Haas. The Haas is not very quick tonight, but Hülkenberg has gotten to where he's gotten because of strategy, just like we have. We have more pace than Hülkenberg, but Lando Norris is going to kind of be the answer to if we can contend with that Haas or not. Piastri has now gotten past Tsunoda, and he is now starting to march towards us, so he's up into the top 10 is now Lando Norris. A big block by the Haas there. They're German, cuts him off, but Norris goes around the outside. A power move there as he moves into P7, and now Hülkenberg drops back towards us, and we can get him ready for a move of our own. And we're waiting for the right opportunity. We know where the right opportunity is. Of course, it's a DRS straight away, the same spot where everybody makes passes here. Now, Verstappen is cruising to victory at this point now. Leclerc, second, certainly disappointed here, but now a little bit later, lap 28, I didn't quite get the opportunity to pass Hülkenberg, so we're going to have to wait another lap, basically, unless, of course, he makes some kind of mistake. I just don't see that happening, but here we go, lap 29, draining our battery using the DRS, lunging to the right side, and at the apex, just just barely at our rear axle was Hulkenberg, but we clear him around the outside. Another position gain. What a night this has turned into in Singapore now. Patience has certainly made things happen, and of course, a lot of strategy gone in our favor. Up into P8, Lando Norris P7 trying to run down Hamilton, but he is not going to quite have enough time as we're coming to just 2 laps to go here from the Singapore Grand Prix. My favorite track on earth. Love racing this circuit, and I had a blast doing this race. It was honestly a lot of fun from start to finish, from the changeable conditions to the strategy that allowed us to go from 20th to now the 8th position. We're going to go no further. Yellow flag in the back, and it's Kevin Magnussen with a mechanical failure. Smoke pouring out of the back of the Haas. It's going to be night over for him, while his teammate of Nico Hulkenberg is up in that 9th position. Piastri P10 closing in quick, but he's not going to have enough time to get to either myself or Hulkenberg. And actually, I never really drove away from Hulkenberg. He was still able to maintain within DRS, but final lap underway here in Singapore, and honestly just proud of this team and proud of our execution here tonight. This is another example of a race that's going to put a rookie driver kind of on the radar for people, and this is races like this that have put us on Zach Brown and McLaren's radar going into next season. They've given us a final offer. Williams has given us a final offer. We still have to hear from one more offer next episode from Trackhouse Racing and Justin Marks, and I think a race like this is going to help us drastically. Max Verstappen rounding the final couple of corners, and now for the 65th time in his career, he wins here in Singapore. Charles Leclerc will bring a home runner-up in P2.
Well done tonight, Max. That's win 65.
Yep, great stuff, guys. Thank you, everyone. That one felt great.
It'll be Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, the podium. We have just a couple of corners to go. Look at the track map. Yuki Tsunoda caused such a train with his lack of power, but we round the final few turns. It's going to be P8 for us here in Singapore. We'll absolutely take that one. An incredible night from 20th to 8th on the grid.
I'd say that worked out pretty well. Thanks, team. Great night. Awesome stuff.
Great drive, mate. Was fun to watch.
Really was awesome, Gary. You were driver of the day in our eyes. Great job being patient again.
The checkered flag is out. We're going to be hearing that Dutch national anthem again because it's victory for Max Verstappen.
Well, that's 2 wins in a row for them now. That's really going to help them gain confidence and start to build that momentum that they're really going to be looking for.
Max Verstappen finally now kind of putting the championship kind of to an end here, almost, you could say. Of course, we still have 6 races left on the season, which is definitely enough time for a guy like Charles Leclerc to be able to close in on him mathematically. Realistically, however, I just don't see that happening here. But obviously, a great night for Max Verstappen here from the Singapore Grand Prix, and extending that championship lead just a little bit further. And of course, us getting P8 does us quite a bit of help as well in the point standings, just getting a few more points, allowing us to maybe get a little bit closer to a guy like Lance Stroll, and of course extending our gap over our teammate of Alex Albon, who's had some bad luck here in some recent races. That's really helped us. 4 points on the night. Oscar Piastri, the last guy in the points. Bottas did get past Tsunoda at the end. Albon ends up P17, Russell P16. A miserable weekend. He started P17, so it just never went well for George Russell, Zhou Guanyu, Ricardo, and then Magnussen with the DNF at the bottom of the grid with that mechanical failure right at the end. 60-point advantage for Max Verstappen over Charles Leclerc. You got Perez, Hamilton, Sainz, the rest of the top 5. We maintain P11, 15 points behind Lance Stroll, and in the Constructors, Red Bull 97 ahead, as we are really just in an island of our own going into the next episode in Coda. I'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.